We have more information tonight about the sixth migrant child to die after detention by border authorities. CBS broke the story last night about a 10-year-old girl from El Salvador who died in the care of the Office of Refugee and Resettlement. A spokesperson for the Department of Health and Human Services, which runs OOR, told CBS the girl had a history of congenital heart defects and entered the facility in March in a medically fragile state. The spokesperson said the girl suffered complications from a surgical procedure and passed away in September due to fever and respiratory distress. Now, these circumstances, we should be very clear, they're quite different than those of other recent migrant child deaths, such as 16-year-old Carlos Gregorio Hernandez Vazquez, who died in a CBP facility one day after being diagnosed with the flu. 16-year-old died of the flu. But it's not just the 10-year-old girl's death that's upsetting. It's that her death appears never to have been disclosed for months. As enterprising immigration reporter Aura Bogado tweeted a few days ago, she started asking CBP about deaths in custody. Quote, "I went back and forth with CBP about it and have now simplified my question. Have there been more than 5 deaths? That's when the agency stopped responding. Here at All In, we too tried to get a straightforward answer to that question from CBP. A spokesperson directed us to their public website, but we were not able to get definitive, on-the-record answers to our questions. Here with me now, Democratic Congressman Joaquin Castro of Texas, who says the Trump administration covered up the girl's death for 8 months. Is there anything in the law that requires reporting of this as it stands now?
The closest thing, Chris, is a appropriations language in the appropriations bill that requires the administration to report to the Appropriations Committee when there's a death in custody. And many of us have been asking, after the time that this young girl died, whether any migrants died in custody or were seriously injured. And we were never told that this girl died in September of last year. So for 8 months, the Congress and the public didn't know about this. That, to me, is a cover-up.
I want to play you an exchange with then DH Secretary Nielsen back in March 6th. Again, this would be months after the death of this girl who apparently, again, was quite ill, had a congenital heart problem. This is Nielsen being asked a sort of series of questions around this. Take a listen.
Madam Secretary, do you know how many children have died in CBP custody under your tenure as Secretary?
Yes, so we have the numbers for CBP and ICE.
Can you give me the numbers of how many children have died?
Yes, I can. If you'll give me 1 second, I just don't want to misspeak. But this last year we had, or so far this year, we've had 3, as you know, in CBP custody.
Now, she does not say ORR, which is different, but it seems like a notable evasion there.
Yeah, that's right. And there's no way that the Secretary of DHS wouldn't know about a death that was handled by ORR. And if the Secretary didn't know that, then the administration is completely incompetent.
What is the solution here? I mean, step back for a second. We now have 6 children who have died, and circumstances of some of these are really distressing. I mean, a 16-year-old dying of a flu should not happen. It just shouldn't happen. You know, that's very young children, right. Very old folks, but a 16-year-old otherwise healthy dying of a flu. What needs to happen here?
Well, there's several things, Chris. And, you know, many of us in Congress have gone out and visited ORR sites, Border Patrol sites, processing centers. And what we found is that these places are woefully underprepared to deal with migrants and even agents who come into emergency situations. So immediately they need to be resourced. People need to be trained medically on how to handle these emergencies and how to spot medical emergencies. And so Dr. Raul Ruiz, who's a member of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus, is going to be proposing a bill soon to establish better medical standards and humane treatment of migrants. So that bill needs to be passed by the House and the Senate right away.
The position of the White House, just to be clear, they say there's a humanitarian and security crisis on the border. Democrats won't play ball because you don't like the wall idea, and ergo, you are not giving the resources and staffing necessary to prevent these kinds of tragedies. That's their position.
Yeah, that's not true at all. In fact, we've given them billions and billions of dollars, and instead of spending that money on helping make sure that people don't die in their custody, they're dedicating it to a wall. Even so, we've said that we're committed to make sure that they have the resources they need to take care of people when they get sick and when they fall ill.
One more question. I'm going to ask you this because this just came out, the White House issuing a statement, and you're on the Intelligence Committee. The president issuing what appears to be an executive order ordering intelligence agencies to cooperate with the review that the Attorney General's ordered of the spying, that's the president's words, that happened in the campaign. It also appears in Section 2 of the executive order to give the Attorney General the ability to declassify or downgrade the classification status of things as he goes through this investigation. What do you make of this?
Yeah, that really is amazing. The difference in cooperation on this spying investigation versus the cooperation the president offered on the Mueller investigation. And really, Chris, what I think this is an attempt by the president to let the women and men of the intelligence community know, FBI agents and others know, that if you investigate him, he's going to come after you.
Right.
That Bill Barr and others are going to come after you. That's what this is.
All right, Congressman Joaquin Castro, thank you so much. Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.